If you were born somewhere around the early 2000s, you must have heard about the teenage boy with a flaming hot hairstyle and his best friend who happens to be a talking dog. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Johnny Test and Dukey. Johnny Test is a Canadian-American animated television series that originally aired from 2005 to 2014 and had a pretty nifty fan following. The show has a total of 8 seasons, 2 of which are considered a separate series, even by Netflix, so we're sticking to the original classic series. However, before we proceed, we need to set some context for those who might be new to the series. This is Jonathan Johnny Test, the 11-year-old son of Hugh and Leela Test, and the brother of twin sisters Susan and Mary. The family resides in the fictional city of Port Belly, where Johnny usually hangs out with his best friend Dukey, who happens to be a talking dog. He has a knack for anything that looks cool to do, which makes him the best guinea pig for his sisters, Susan and Mary. Now these two are not your average sisters. They are in fact scientifically gifted and come up with different kinds of inventions in the show. They often lure Johnny with something he wants and use him to test their experiments, which don't always go as planned. Now that you understand the basic setting of the show, let's dive into the episodes. In the very first episode, Johnny to the Center of the Earth, the Port Belly News reports about some mysterious underground bandits that the police are trying to catch. 3 bikers are waiting at a stop sign when they suddenly disappear underground and pop back up wearing only their underwear. Next, at the military base, a new rocket is shown off but quickly disappears underground too. Then, a car salesman with a strange ad finds his cars taken underground as well. The news report ends with an offer of $500 for anyone who can help solve the case just before the radio itself is pulled underground. Johnny gets interested in the mystery and comes up with a plan involving his dad's camera. He convinces Dukey to help by promising him a stake and 20 video games for himself. As they film, both the camera and Dukey are snatched underground, but when they pop back, the camera is gone. Susan and Mary find the idea of mole people amusing, but still consider the mystery. Johnny's dad gives him until 6 o'clock to retrieve the camera, or else he'll take away Johnny's games, comics, and Dukey until he's 30. Susan offers Johnny the keys to the atomic Earth dozer in exchange for testing an experiment involving microphysic flakes to enhance his attractiveness. The experiment backfires, turning Johnny into a monster temporarily. Johnny retrieves the keys by shaking Susan, but he transforms back to himself afterward. Susan then tells Johnny about the mission, but their conversation is interrupted by Eugene, also called the Bling Bling Boy, who threatens Port Belly unless Susan goes on a date with him. Ignoring him, Susan and Mary give Johnny and Dukey weapons for their underground journey. Despite Susan's advice to be careful, Johnny speeds up the drill, burying Susan and Mary in the dirt. 20 minutes later, Johnny and Dukey continue their descent at full speed. They plan to retrieve the camera peacefully, but are captured by mole people. The Mole King, Zizura, decides to speed up their attack on the surface. In a last-ditch effort, Johnny and Dukey used a special substance that Susan made to turn into monsters, allowing them to break free and retrieve the camera. They then blind the mole people with a camera flash, causing chaos. They return home in time for dinner, and Johnny presents the camera to Eugene, claiming Susan invited him. When he presents meatloaf for dinner, everyone screams in horror, ending the first episode. The episode Johnny X begins with Dukey filling a pool with water as Johnny prepares to jump into it with makeshift wings. As Dukey breaks the 4th wall, cautioning against trying this at home, Johnny jumps and lands in the mud-filled pool. After Johnny's failed attempt at flying, he and Dukey observe Susan and Mary dressed up, waiting for Gil, the neighborhood heartthrob. Later, Johnny drives a small car with wings with Dukey pushing it. As they gain speed, Dukey jumps on the car and they pass Susan and Mary, who are dressed up but once again ignored by Gil. The girls' repeated attempts to get Gil's attention fail, leading Johnny to comment that not even an ultra-love potion would work. Feeling insulted, Susan and Mary use wires to send Johnny and Dukey flying. In the lab, the girls create a love bubble gum to make Gil fall for them. Johnny and Dukey crash into Susan and Mary's lab, where the girls have just finished making the love gum. Johnny warns them not to experiment on their neighbors, but Mary suggests they won't get caught. They lock Johnny and Dukey in a safe, but the boys manage to get out and witness Gil turning into a gorilla after chewing the love gum. Susan and Mary make a deal with Johnny. If he can catch the gorilla Gil using their inventions, they will change him back and not tell their father about his experiments. Johnny and Dukey are transformed into superheroes named Johnny X and Super Dukey. With various powers, they pursue Gil, who is causing chaos in the city. Despite Johnny's powers, Gil is ultimately captured by military forces. Johnny and Dukey infiltrate Area 51.1, where Johnny uses his new jet propulsion power to break in and free Gil. However, they are captured by Mr. Black and Mr. White, who also have mutant powers. Johnny surprises them with his flame-throwing ability, and Dukey uses it to burn down the base. They escape with Gil, but are pursued by fighter aircraft. which Johnny destroys using his big propulsion power. A news report covers up the incident, but Mr. Black accidentally reveals the truth about his mutant powers. Soon after, it is shown that Johnny has eaten all of his beans, making Susan, Mary, and Dukey panic and leave the house as Johnny burns it down. The episode ends with Johnny's father angered, calling for Susan and Mary. The episode Johnny vs. Bling Bling Boy kicks off at the Mega Institute of Technology, where Professor Slopsink introduces new students Mr. Black and Mr. White, whom Tim Burnout identifies as special agents. He then introduces Miss X and Miss Z, and Tim says they are cyborgs sent to steal their experiments. As the class proceeds, Susan and Mary unveil the Alchemist 5000, a device that can turn metal into gold, impressing everyone except Professor Slopsink. However, Barry turns his metal hand into gold, catching the attention of Mr. Black and Mr. White. Meanwhile, at the Test family home, Johnny agrees to test Susan and Mary's new invention, a seemingly harmless milkshake. After drinking it, he transforms into a muscular man with a full beard, earning praise from his sisters. However, as their father enters and orders them to dispose of the Alchemist 5000, Eugene's robot steals it. Eugene then demands Susan's affection in exchange for sparing the city from his plan to turn it into a treasure chest. Susan refuses, prompting Eugene to connect the device to his super laser. Susan and Mary turn to Johnny for help, who agrees in exchange for kung fu powers and a baby Triceratops. Susan and Mary modify him and Dukey with various powers before they go on their mission to Eugene's island. On the island, Eugene tests his laser, accidentally turning his lab into gold. Johnny and Dukey confront Eugene, but Johnny is captured and nearly zapped by the gold laser. However, Dukey comes to his rescue and they defeat Eugene just as CIA helicopters arrive. As Eugene is dragged away by his mother, the CIA agents thank Johnny for his help. Johnny returns home just in time for dinner, much to Susan and Mary's relief. The episode ends with the two of them break dancing in front of the Test family. Johnny Impossible begins at the baseball court where Dukey is enjoying a coffee while watching Sissy throw the ball for Bumper. The ball hits Bumper on the head, causing chaos as kids scramble to catch it. Johnny steps up to bat but repeatedly misses, leading to his team's loss. Frustrated, Johnny throws his bat in anger. Back at the Test house, Johnny asks Susan and Mary for help improving his baseball skills. Susan and Mary try different inventions, but nothing works. Eventually, they create a special ball and bat for Johnny. However, during practice, Johnny accidentally hits the ball into Old Man Newman's house. Panicked, Johnny enlists Susan, Mary, and Dukey to help retrieve the ball before the next game. They try various schemes, but each fails. Finally, they resort to disguising themselves as Santa Claus and using a snow machine, and Old Man Newman outsmarts them each time. With minutes left before the game, Johnny's sisters and Dukey scramble to find a solution. They try different plans, but all fail until Johnny hits upon an idea. Using a special bat, he launches himself and Dukey into the air, retrieving the ball mid-flight. Impressed by Johnny's determination, Old Man Newman agrees to return the ball in exchange for Johnny apologizing for breaking his window and promising to change the bases so his house won't be hit again. At the final game, Johnny hits a winning home run, surprising everyone, especially Sissy. However, in his celebration, Johnny accidentally breaks a window at his own house, leading to his dad's angry shouts. As Hugh angrily calls for Johnny, Old Man Newman advises everyone to run, and chaos ensues as the episode ends. Next up is one of my favorite episodes, Johnny Test, Party Monster. It begins with the Test family finishing dinner, and Hugh offers more meatloaf, which Johnny promptly shoves into Dukey's mouth. Hugh and Leela announce that Susan and Mary can host their first code party, and the girls rush to prepare in the lab. They experiment with themes and decide to use a prototype called the Firo Booster to enhance the party's atmosphere. Johnny is eager to attend the party and agrees to help with the experiment in exchange for an invite. Johnny drinks the Firo Booster, transforming into a handsome version of himself. The next day, Johnny impresses girls and teachers alike at school, even persuading Gil and his crush Janet to attend the party. As the party approaches, Susan and Mary discover that the Firo Booster has turned their experimental mice into monsters. When Johnny returns with the same side effect, Mary makes an effort to fix Johnny with makeup. Whether it worked or not is up for debate. As the party begins, Johnny tries to impress Janet but fails, and she leaves in disgust. As he embarrasses himself on the dance floor, the other guests also start to leave, but Susan and Mary turn off the lights to create a romantic atmosphere. However, their father, Hugh, notices the lights off and heads to the lab. To save the party, Susan and Mary plan to transfer pheromones from themselves to Johnny to restore his looks temporarily. Johnny, now back to looking super attractive, successfully convinces his dad to let the party continue, and the party is a success, with Johnny, Janet, and Gil enjoying themselves. Susan and Mary ended up taking the hit, but hey, at least the party was a success. In the episode Johnny Test, Extreme Crime Stopper, we are introduced to the Extreme Teen team committing a series of daring robberies, including stealing a Red Gush truck and a truck full of sugar. Johnny and Dukey discover that all the Red Gush and chips deliveries have been intercepted by the Extreme Teen gang, and they decide to take action. Susan and Mary, along with Mr. Black and Mr. White, asks Johnny and Dukey to help catch the extreme teen gang in exchange for tickets to a concert. Johnny and Dukey agree, and they set out in a spy car to catch the gang. They engage in a high-speed chase, and Johnny uses the car's gadgets to stop the gang from causing further havoc. Eventually, Johnny and Dukey manage to stop the extreme teen gang and save a bus full of happy old people from a collision. The police arrive and mistake Johnny and Dukey for members of the gang, but Mr. Black and Mr. White clear up the misunderstanding and thank Johnny and Dukey for their help. Later, Susan and Mary discover that the Screamo bus has been stolen by the extreme teen gang. They devise a plan to track them down, and with Johnny and Dukey's help, they infiltrate the gang's headquarters and rescue Screamo. In the end, Screamo performs a private concert for Susan, Mary, Johnny, and Dukey as a thank you for saving them. The episode Johnny and the Ice Pigs begins with Johnny and Dukey watching a hockey match between the Ice Pigs and the Hammerheads. The Ice Pigs are getting crushed, and Johnny is upset about it. He decides to travel back in time to ask Thomas Edison for an invention to help the Ice Pigs win. Susan and Mary help Johnny and Dukey use their time machine to travel to Thomas Edison's laboratory. They convince Thomas Edison to modify his plans for a lettuce accelerator to create a snacks accelerator for the Ice Pigs. However, during their visit, Dukey accidentally electrocutes Thomas Edison, causing Johnny to worry about how they'll help the Ice Pigs now. After resurrecting Thomas Edison, Johnny and Dukey return to the present with the plans. They realize that they can't use the snacks accelerator, so Johnny decides to gather a team of historical warriors to play for the Ice Pigs instead. Johnny convinces the warriors to join his team, and they head to the hockey match. With the historical warriors on their side, the Ice Pigs manage to tie the game against the Hammerheads. In the final seconds, they score the winning goal, securing a victory for the Ice Pigs. Susan and Mary also successfully create a snack machine, much to Johnny and Dukey's delight. In the end, Johnny and Dukey celebrate the Ice Pigs' victory with the rest of the team and the historical warriors enjoying the snacks and the win. In The Return of Johnny X, Leela assists Susan and Mary with their Science Expo preparations while Hugh searches for Johnny. Leela mistakenly directs the girls to the lab where Johnny and Dukey are experimenting with salsa ingredients in a nuclear cell splitter. Accidentally pressing the red button, they're all drenched in salsa when Susan and Mary enter. At the expo, Eugene unveils his genetically enhanced lizard, Reptoslicer, but it escapes, prompting Mr. Black and Mr. White to seek Susan and Mary's help. Johnny X and Super Dukey take action, but fail to capture Reptoslicer and return to the lab. Mr. Black and Mr. White reveal that they can learn about his weakness from its creator, who demands a smooch from Susan. When their own lab is destroyed, Susan heads to the prison and meets his demands. But it turns out Eugene lied just to get a smooch. Funnily enough, he got tricked by Susan, who had created a Susan bot who gives him a good old beating for lying to them. Eugene then reveals that he never took care of his pet, making Johnny realize that all Reptoslicer needs is a good owner. Using a ball and a wooden stick, Johnny X manages to tame the little beast and turn it into an adorable little lizard. Back home, Johnny uses Reptoslicer to make salsa, and when his dad wishes his food was hot, he uses his Johnny X fire fart to burn the whole house down. In this episode titled Johnny Hollywood, Johnny and Dukey become fascinated with Susan and Mary's new invention, the ultra-reality helmets. These helmets allow the wearer to enter and experience the world of movies as if they were actually part of the film. Johnny and Dukey eagerly try them out, starting with the movie The Quickest and the Monkiest, but quickly find themselves in over their heads when they enter the world of Solar Wars and get caught in a laser battle. Meanwhile, Hugh installs a ceiling fan, causing a power outage that leaves Johnny and Dukey trapped in the ultra-reality world. Susan and Mary realize the danger and rush to the lab to find Johnny and Dukey stuck in the helmets. They discover that the only way to free them is to complete the movie, which involves a high-speed chase ending with a jump off the Grand Canyon. After successfully completing the movie and freeing Johnny and Dukey, Susan and Mary refuse to let them use the ultra-reality helmets again. However, Dukey manages to trick them into another adventure by impersonating Gil, leading them into the world of Jurassic Park. The episode ends with Johnny and Dukey once again immersed in a wild and unpredictable adventure. In Johnny's Big Snow Job, Porkbelly is hit by an unexpected heat wave instead of a predicted snowstorm. Johnny and Dukey try various ways to cool off until Zizzer, a mole-like alien, threatens to invade Earth. Johnny seeks Susan and Mary's help to create snow, but is initially denied. Eventually, they relent and provide a snowmaking machine, but it produces only a small amount of snow. Johnny and Dukey fall asleep waiting for more snow, only to be awakened by a blast of cold air. They enjoy snowboarding but encounter Zizzer, whom they defeat using their snowboards. Later, Johnny sneaks into the lab and uses the snow machine again without permission, causing a massive snowstorm. Porkbelly is buried under snow, forcing everyone indoors. Johnny regrets his actions and seeks a solution to stop the snow. With Susan and Mary's help, they use hot gas from the Earth's core to melt the snow, restoring normalcy to Porkbelly. The episode concludes with Zizrar and his mole henchman dancing while Johnny attempts to study for school, which is opening tomorrow. In the episode of Johnny and the Attack of the Monster Truck, Johnny and Dukey are excited about attending a monster truck derby. However, Eugene disrupts their plans by bringing a monster truck named Road Burn to impress Susan. When Susan shows no interest, Eugene kicks Road Burn, causing it to become enraged. Johnny and Dukey manage to escape to the derby, where Road Burn wreaks havoc, destroying all the other trucks. The audience flees and the derby is canceled. Back at home, Susan dismisses the importance of monster trucks, while she and Mary deal with their own problem of two fighting hamsters. Johnny takes Dukey for a walk, which leads them to a secret base where Mr. White and Mr. Black are fighting for dominance. Johnny informs them about Road Burn, that they have their own plans. However, Johnny convinces them that their plans will fail unless they stop Road Burn. Mr. White and Mr. Black give Johnny a top-secret government monster truck to stop Road Burn. They attempt to destroy Road Burn, but he outmaneuvers them and destroys most of their truck. They are ejected and land in the Test Sisters' lab. Road Burn continues his rampage until he sees a new contestant named Ginger and falls in love, thus ending his rampage. The Monster Truck Derby is revived and Johnny and Dukey finally get to drive a monster truck. In the episode Johnnyland, the Test family spends a day at an amusement park. But Johnny's dream ride is closed just as he reaches the front of the line, leading to his frustration. Determined to create their own fun, Johnny and Dukey trick Susan and Mary into leaving by claiming their VIPs at the library wing, leaving them with the construction drones. The drones build a bed coaster that extends out of Johnny's window, around the house and back. When Susan and Mary return and discover the coaster, Johnny blackmails them with knowledge of a failed experiment to keep them quiet. As Johnny tires of the amusement park, he tricks Susan and Mary again by telling them about a pool party at Gil's house. They realize they were duped and return home to find the yard transformed into an amusement park. Despite their orders, the construction drones and then the destruction drones refuse to destroy it because it's too much fun. When their parents return, Leela is proud of the amusement park, but Hugh wants it destroyed. If not destroyed in an hour, they would lose the lab for a week. Susan and Mary build a scary ride in the garage to scare Johnny, but their parents accidentally ride it instead, flying millions of feet into the air. The kids manage to save them by landing them in a bounce house. Although their parents are safe, they end up getting sick from the ride. And Johnny's got a brand new dad. Johnny is frustrated with his dad always saying no to things he wants to do, like unicycling on the roof, playing with his food, eating candy, or climbing into the alligator pit. Johnny and Dukey are ready to go to a hockey game, but Hugh comes in and says no, which angers Johnny. After Hugh leaves, Johnny and Dukey discuss replacing him with a new fun dad that his sisters could create. Initially unsure, Johnny tries sweet-talking Hugh, but is still refused, so he decides to go through with the plan. Susan and Mary are reluctant at first, but when reminded of times Hugh said no to them, they agree to help. With Hugh distracted searching for his missing shoe, the kids and Dukey create a new robot dad. They add various features to make him fun, including a lock of hair, a picture, dirty clothes, a clown nose, and shoes. Once activated, Robot Dad allows Johnny to unicycle on the roof and serves candy for dinner. However, things start going wrong as Robot Dad goes haywire due to the effects of the plutonium the girls ordered. He becomes uncontrollable, and the kids end up in dangerous situations like falling into a thorn bush and ending up in an alligator pit at the zoo. They call Hugh for help, and he manages to save them by using his shoe to feed the crocodiles. In the end, the family learns to appreciate Hugh for who he is, even when he serves meatloaf for dinner every single day. In the episode Johnny Mint Chip, Johnny and Dukey sneakily indulge in Leela and Hugh's Mega Mint Chip ice cream, leaving a messy kitchen behind. When Leela discovers the empty container, she bans mint ice cream until they receive an apology. Despite this, Dukey, who loves ice cream, convinces Johnny to make their own using an ice cream maker. Their homemade ice cream creation turns out to be terrible, so they turn to Susan and Mary, who also fail to produce a good batch. Desperate for good ice cream, they decide to visit the ice cream factory by disguising themselves as Leela to gain entry. During the factory tour, Johnny and Dukey sneak into the ice cream vats, while Susan and Mary attempt to test their invention on monkeys but face some resistance. In the chaos, Dukey gets trapped in the ice cream packaging, prompting Johnny to seek help from Susan and Mary, who are preoccupied with the monkeys. With no other options, Johnny enlists the monkeys' help to find Dukey, who manages to escape just in time. He returns with ice cream samples, but Johnny, Susan, and Mary pass out from eating too much mint chip. In The Revenge of Johnny X, the news reports of a huge robot monster destroying the city, which Johnny and Dukey find super cool. However, the robot eventually makes it to the test residence where it kidnaps Susan. As Mary seeks help, Susan is presented with a fancy-looking meal inside the robot and is greeted by none other than Eugene. He lists all the pros of living with him, and when Susan tries to leave, she finds out that she might be stuck with him inside the robot. Meanwhile, the army brings out weapons to destroy the robot, but all of them prove ineffective against it. Mary then asks Johnny for his help and to remember all the good times he had with her, but the only thing he can remember is how she used him as a guinea pig for her experiments. Despite everything, Johnny decides to help his sister in distress. Mary turns them into Johnny X and Super Dukey, and the two realize Eugene is the one who kidnapped her. Meanwhile, Susan tries to take advantage of Eugene by making him steal the zero-gravity chamber from Area 51.1. Mr. Black and Mr. White learn from Mary that Eugene is behind the robot and team up to defeat him. As Susan is having the time of her life in the zero-gravity chamber, Johnny X and Super Dukey enter the robot, which distracts Eugene, leaving Susan alone with all the experiments that are made to her liking. As they defeat Eugene and his minions, they find Susan enjoying her time inside the robot and decide to join in on the fun. In Johnny Zombie Tea Party, Johnny needs to write a report on the Founding Fathers but struggles to find information. He asks his sisters, Susan and Mary, to write the report for him, but they refuse. Johnny then steals their plant-reviving device and uses it to bring the Founding Fathers back to life. However, they return as zombies and cause chaos in Pork Belly. The military tries to stop the zombies, but their efforts fail, resulting in destruction and chaos. Leela is furious with Johnny and demands that he fix the mess he created. Johnny gets an idea and brings back the Founding Fathers' mothers, who scold their sons for scaring the townspeople and make them apologize. In the end, Mr. Teacherman assigns the students to write a report about the Founding Fathers' mothers. Johnny decides to bring them back to life as well, setting up a humorous ending where he asks them questions and chaos ensues. In Johnny vs. Super Soaking Cyborgs, Johnny and Dukey face off against Sissy, the neighborhood's reigning water gun champion, who has a powerful new water gun that can soak down to a person's underwear. Determined to beat her, they ask Susan and Mary for a stronger water gun, who are busy stalking Gil. Johnny advises them to make other cool guys like them so Gil would get jealous and ask them out. Later, Susan and Mary introduce Johnny and Dukey to their new creations, 3 Boyborgs programmed to be in love with them. They use the Boyborgs to make Gil jealous, but Gil ends up inviting the girls to his pool party without the Boyborgs, injuring them and causing them to vow revenge. When Johnny is about to soak Sissy, Susan and Mary intervene and take the water guns away, demanding that Johnny and Dukey stop the Boyborgs from destroying Gil if they want the guns back. Johnny and Dukey come up with a plan to short-circuit the Boyborgs using water, with Johnny taking on the task while the girls hold Gil hostage. As the Boyborgs pursue Johnny and Dukey, they manage to short out Phil and Bill with water, but will prove more difficult. Susan and Mary inform them that the Boyborgs are now protected against water, so Johnny has to think of a new plan. They dress Dukey up as Gil to distract Will while they aim for his weak spot. With the final blast, the water tower collapses on Will, shorting him out and saving the day. Susan and Mary cheer for Johnny, who has saved the neighborhood from the Boyborgs. Gil, still unaware of what happened, revokes the girl's invitation to his party. As he leaves, he says hi to Johnny, leaving the boys confused as Susan and Mary continue to swoon over Gil. In the episode The Good, the Bad, and the Johnny, Johnny inadvertently causes chaos in his sister's lab, expecting punishment, but instead discovers they've conducted an experiment to remove his bad gene, leaving him only capable of doing good deeds. Initially, Johnny struggles against his newfound goodness, inadvertently spreading positivity through hugs and kind gestures, much to his frustration. However, a power outage caused by Hugh inadvertently releases the imprisoned Bad Plasma, which materializes into a malevolent version of Johnny. Bad Johnny proceeds to wreak havoc across Pork Belly, targeting Bumper and causing chaos throughout the town. Realizing they must restore Johnny to his normal state, Susan, Mary, and Dukey track down Bad Johnny and set a trap. Despite Good Johnny inadvertently warning his evil counterpart, Dukey's backup plan allows them to capture Bad Johnny. The sisters then merge the 2 Johnnies back together. Johnny, now restored to his original state, promises to be nicer. However, in a humorous twist, he immediately reverts to his mischievous ways, suggesting that being good might take some time. In the episode Rockabye Johnny, Johnny and Dukey engage in energetic pillow boxing, ignoring his parents' advice to go to sleep early. As a result, Johnny falls asleep in class and receives an F from Mr. Teacherman. Seeking help from Susan and Mary, Johnny accidentally zaps his parents and Lolo with a dream machine, causing chaos as they all start sleepwalking. Johnny attempts to wake his parents, but conventional methods fail. Even using a fire hydrant backfires, sending Johnny, Dukey, and the girls flying. As they chase after their sleepwalking parents, the situation becomes increasingly absurd, with Susan and Mary temporarily turned into boys and Dukey transformed into a sheep. Eventually, Susan and Mary try to use the dream machine to wake everyone up, but Johnny ends up growing into a giant instead. Ultimately, the entire escapade is revealed to be a dream, with Johnny waking up to find everything back to normal. Despite his initial reluctance, Johnny decides to follow Dukey's advice and uses his imagination to help him fall asleep. In the episode Johnny vs. Bling Bling 3, Susan strikes a deal with Johnny to do all his math homework for a month in exchange for keeping Bling Bling Boy away from her, while she and Mary work on developing an anti-Susan love lozenge. They test the lozenge on Lolo the monkey, but discover it's missing a crucial ingredient, the beet root of a Pima cactus. To retrieve the root, Johnny and Dukey are outfitted with ugly Sonic Rocket sneakers and sent to the Arizona desert. Meanwhile, Bling Bling Boy's minions believe Johnny is the reason he can't get a date with Susan, so he decides to eliminate Johnny. With Bling Bling Boy on their tail, Johnny and Dukey race to retrieve the special ingredient and return it to Susan and Mary. Despite the challenges and being pursued by Bling Bling Boy, they succeed. The anti-Susan love lozenge works on Lolo and Bling Bling Boy, but now he's in love with Mary. To help Mary escape, Dukey gives her the Sonic Rocket sneakers. Susan informs Johnny and Dukey that the lozenge's effects will wear off in about 30 days, so Bling Bling Boy will chase her again. Johnny adds that this will give Susan plenty of time to focus on his math homework, much to her chagrin, while Bling Bling Boy chases after Mary in his chopper. In the episode Stinkin' Johnny, Johnny and Dukey want to buy a new HD TV to watch Mega Battle Wrestling 9, but Hugh refuses to give them the money because their current TV is fine. They accidentally break a window in Hugh's car while playing baseball, prompting Hugh to chase after them. To earn money for the new TV, Johnny decides to enter a wrestling contest where the winner gets $10,000. Susan and Mary create a perfume to attract Gil, but it ends up being so stinky that it knocks out anyone who smells it for 10 minutes. Johnny uses this perfume as Stinkin' Johnny to defeat the caveman and win the wrestling contest. However, before Johnny can claim his prize, he runs out of perfume and gets kidnapped by the caveman. Dukey, Susan, Mary, and even Hugh attempt to rescue him but fail. In the end, Leela, as the overprotective mom, defeats the caveman and wins the prize money. Johnny is grounded from TV for a month, his sisters are grounded from the lab, and Dukey hangs out with them. Unfortunately, Johnny accidentally hits the new HD TV with a baseball, leading to another round of being grounded. In the episode Johnny X and the Attack of the Snowman, Susan and Mary watch Gil mow his lawn, hoping to catch a glimpse of him shirtless. However, it starts snowing and Gil puts on a jacket, disappointing the girls. Johnny and Dukey then playfully pelt the girls with snowballs, leading them to think Johnny and Dukey caused the sudden snowfall. Johnny and Dukey decide to create a snowman, but Johnny suggests that they bring it to life like Frosty the Snowman. They ask Susan and Mary for a magic hat, claiming it's for the snowman, but the hat actually brings the snowman to life. The snowman turns out to be Brain Freezer's creation, and he plans to take over Pork Belly by creating an army of snowmen. Brain Freezer's snowmen start attacking the town, and Johnny and the others try to stop them. They manage to temporarily defeat the snowman using Gil's body heat, cause he's hot, you know. But Brain Freezer retaliates by freezing the entire town solid. Eventually, Johnny uses his heat powers to melt the snow and defeat Brain Freezer, saving the town. In the end, Johnny and the others enjoy a snowball fight using Brain Freezer's freeze ray, while Gil shivers in the cold, asking if he can put on a jacket, to which they playfully respond no. In the episode Johnny Holiday, Johnny and Dukey eat their last Easter egg and want more, so they sneak into Susan and Mary's lab to take their Easter eggs. Susan and Mary give them the eggs, and Johnny shows them a calendar, pointing out that there are no candy holidays from May to September. Johnny decides to create a new holiday in July called Kids Get Free Candy Day. To celebrate the new holiday, Johnny brings back George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Thomas Jefferson. However, they fail to deliver the candy, so Johnny creates a purple kangaroo called the Candy-Roo to deliver the candy bars. The beekeeper, alerted by the unusual chocolate consumption, tries to stop them, but the Candy-Roo scares him away. When Susan and Mary refuse to help anymore, Johnny takes on the role of the Candy Ninja, silently delivering candy to 200 houses. The new holiday, Happy Kids Get Free Candy Day, is a success, but they are sued by the Easter Bunny for not delivering candy to the entire world. To resolve the issue, they create a new holiday called Bee Happy Day, where bees deliver piles of honey bars everywhere. In the end, the gang enjoys piles of honey bars while the Easter Bunny's lawyers try to escape from the bars after attempting to sue again. And coming to a Johnny near you, Johnny and Dukey are disappointed when the Speed McCool movie they anticipated turns out to be boring. They decide to ask Susan and Mary to create a machine that makes boring things exciting. The girls, initially skeptical, agree to try and create the machine after Johnny suggests they won't be able to star in a romantic comedy with Gil if they don't. Susan and Mary create the Voice Over 9000, a machine that uses 90% of the brain's capacity to change the way people think. They'd first tested on Dukey, turning him into an enthusiastic cheerleader. Johnny then uses it to make his school day more exciting, turning his ride to school into a limo and getting a pizza delivered to class. However, the machine malfunctions and gets stuck in action mode, causing chaos as it predicts Johnny being chased by ninjas, a rogue cop, and toddlers. In the end, Johnny manages to reboot the machine, returning everything to normal. As they prepare to destroy the Voice Over 9000, Hugh announces it's Meatloaf Night. The kids use the machine one last time to make Hugh throw away the meatloaf, order pizza, and throw a party, ending the day on an exciting note. Johnny Mustache begins with Johnny and Dukey eagerly anticipating a scary movie called The Beast, known for its terrifying impact on viewers. Despite his efforts to sneak in, Johnny is denied entry due to the film's strict age rating. Determined to see it, Johnny convinces his sisters to give him a fake mustache using their invention, the Zoomer Groomer, which stimulates hair growth. With his new mustache, Johnny successfully gains entry into the movie. The film proves to be as terrifying as rumored, leaving Dukey and Johnny with frozen expressions of fear. Johnny then decides to take advantage of his new adult appearance, using his mustache to gain a driver's license and even attracting the attention of a movie director, Speed McCool, who offers him a role in his next film. Meanwhile, Bling Bling Boy, desperate to look older, asks Johnny to use the Zoomer groomer on him. However, Bling Bling ends up with excessive hair growth, resembling a beast. Mistaken for the movie monster, chaos ensues as Bling Bling unintentionally causes havoc in Pork Belly. The government gets involved, but Bling Bling is eventually rescued by Johnny and his sisters. The episode ends with everyone enjoying another screening of The Beast, this time without any trouble getting in. In Johnny Escape from Bling Bling Island, Johnny and Dukey find themselves in the lab, bored after exhausting their video games and completing Johnny's homework. They're surprised to see Susan and Mary in dresses preparing for dinner with Gil and his mother later that night. The girls reveal their plan to impress Gil and eventually marry him in 6 years, banking on their secret weapon, Italian pumps from their shoe collection. However, they discover that the right shoe of each pair is missing, prompting an investigation. Reviewing security footage, they spot a familiar figure, taking the shoes before the camera is destroyed. Suspecting Bling Bling Boy, Susan confronts him, but he denies any involvement. Determined to retrieve their shoes, Susan and Mary enlist Johnny and Dukey's help, promising them favors in return. Johnny and Dukey embark on a journey to Bling Bling Island, where they're captured by Bling Bling Boy. Despite evidence of the stolen shoes, Bling Bling Boy claims innocence. They eventually find the shoe room and reclaim the missing pairs, narrowly escaping Bling Bling Boy's retaliation. Returning home, Johnny and Dukey are praised for their success in retrieving the shoes. Susan and Mary are grateful for their help, but they soon get into a fight over who will marry Gil. At dinner, Gil is oblivious to the chaos, simply stating that his day was uneventful. In the next episode, Johnny X, A New Beginning, is a really important one. It begins with Johnny excited for the Earth Day Carnival in Pork Belly Central Park, but his dad is sad because a cat is stuck down a well. Johnny and Dukey transform into Johnny X and Super Dukey by Susan and Mary save the cat. However, there are more emergencies. A cat stuck in burning trees and another on a train heading for a cliff. After saving all the cats, Johnny X and Super Dukey are exhausted. It turns out that a league of villains, the Johnny-stopping Evil Force 5, tricked them into saving the cats to drain their powers. One of the members, Mr. Mittens, points out there are now 4 villains since the beekeeper resigned, so Wacko introduces Zizra the Mole King as their new recruit. Dad, thinking all the cats is safe, wonders why Johnny and Dukey are so tired but then gets frozen by the villains. The heroes retreat to the lab, where the girls try to enhance their powers, but the villains intervene and gain powers instead. They escape to Bling Bling Boy's lab. Bling Bling Boy agrees to help if Susan kisses him in the Tunnel of Love, but she freezes him with a lipstick Bling Bling zapper instead. After getting new powers, they teleport to the villains' hideout but find it empty. They teleport to the carnival and capture the villains, but Dark Vegan returns to threaten Johnny and Earth. In Johnny X, the final ending, Dark Vegan orders his minions to destroy all the vegetation from the planet, but his daughter and wife scold him for ruining their vacation to Earth. Despite their protests, he starts sucking up all of Earth's resources, and Mr. Black and White estimate that they only have 1 hour before the Earth is fully sucked dry. The military general summons the test kids to save Earth, who use high-tech military equipment to counter Dark Vegan. However, their plan crumbles to dust, and Johnny decides to teleport inside his ship with a doomsday device to defeat him once and for all. With a 30-second timer, Johnny teleports inside, raising a metal detecting alarm. He panics and teleports back with the bomb, which explodes on Earth and destroys the entire military base along with their weapons. Johnny then seeks help from the imprisoned Johnny, stopping Evil Force 5, who initially refuses, but agrees to help when they learn that the whole planet is at stake. They teleport to the ship once again and sneak around. Johnny looks for Dark Vegan's daughter Jillian, who helps locate his self-destruct panel. After they evacuate Jillian from the ship, they combine their powers to destroy the ship, which returns all of Earth's resources. Jillian makes it back and tells them about Johnny's sacrifice, but in a matter of seconds, Johnny, Dukey, and the Johnny-stopping Evil Force 5 fall from the sky onto a bouncy castle. Soon after, Dark Vegan falls from the sky too and vows revenge, but Johnny brushes it off and the episode ends as they all laugh at him. In the episode, Johnny's new baby sisters, Hume and Leela, leave Johnny and his sisters in charge while they go out for dinner. Meanwhile, Susan and Mary accidentally turn themselves into babies so Gil, who has his own babysitting service, can come to take care of them. However, Gil proves to be irresponsible, leaving Johnny to care for the baby versions of his sisters with Dukey's help. They struggle with feeding, changing diapers, and keeping the babies out of trouble. Bling Bling Boy unexpectedly visits and offers to help care for the babies in exchange for time with baby Susan. Unable to reverse the transformation without the code, Johnny warns the girls about their parents returning early. They reluctantly give him the code, and the babies are turned back into teens. As they hastily clean up the house, Johnny and the others nearly escape detection until baby items hidden on the couch are discovered. Gil's comment about their new babies angers Hugh and Leela, and the kids realize they're in trouble but narrowly avoid getting caught. In the episode Johnny BC, the Test sisters go on a class trip to the desert to find fossils. Exhausted, they decide to send Johnny back in time to retrieve a fossil. Johnny agrees, but he's grounded for selling his dad's belongings. Despite this, Johnny manages to get the fossil, but Caveman Salvo transforms him into a caveman. He goes on a rampage, but the girls use a device to change his appearance back to normal. However, his mind remains primitive. Caveman Johnny causes chaos, including smashing things, licking Sissy, and even scoring points at a baseball game. The sisters and Dukey track him down and use a torch to bring him back home. Johnny, thinking Hugh's casserole is terrible, hits him with a club, prompting Hugh to order takeout burgers. The sisters put Johnny back in the time machine with a piece of gum as a replacement fossil, and he returns to normal. In the episode Runaway Johnny, Johnny becomes frustrated with his parents constantly telling him he's a big boy and giving him more chores and responsibilities while still considering him too young for certain things like watching a PG-13 movie. Feeling fed up, Johnny decides to run away with Dukey. After failed attempts to leave town, Johnny and Dukey find themselves in Startover City, where they encounter Mr. Black and Mr. White. They flee into the woods, surviving on crickets after their food is eaten by squirrels. Eventually, they are caught by Mr. Black and Mr. White, who sympathize with Johnny's feelings. Upon returning home, Johnny learns that his parents didn't even realize he was gone. Mr. Black and Mr. White help Johnny teach his parents a lesson by pretending to look for a runaway boy who felt unappreciated. Johnny's parents realize their mistake and allow him to watch the movie, understanding that if he's old enough for chores, he's old enough for other things too. The family reconciles, and Johnny and Dukey enjoy the movie together. In the episode Johnny on the Spot, Johnny gets hold of a black hole device created by his sisters, which can create portals to other locations. Initially, Johnny and Dukey play harmless pranks with the device. However, things get out of hand when they use it to escape from Bumper and his gang. The black hole starts sucking everything in, including the Earth itself. Realizing their mistake, Johnny, Dukey, Susan, and Mary travel through the black hole to Cho Now, a military base with a super magnet that can counteract the black hole's effects. Once there, they have to face Cho Now warriors and work around the base. Finally, they locate the giant space magnet and manage to activate it, reversing the black hole's pull and saving the Earth. Returning home, the girls decide to destroy the black hole device. However, Johnny reveals that he kept a piece of it for emergencies. In a comedic ending, Johnny uses the device to play a prank on Bumper, causing him to get a wedgie. Next up is the episode Dark Johnny. After being stranded on Earth, Dark Vegan vows to destroy Johnny Test, whom he hates, while his daughter Jillian likes Johnny. Vegan struggles to find and keep a job on Earth, failing miserably in roles like a waiter, valet, and cashier due to his lack of understanding of Earth's customs. Vegan makes various unsuccessful attempts to destroy Johnny, including surprise attacks and direct confrontations, but Johnny and Dukey always manage to evade him. Eventually, Vegan surrenders and admits he misses ruling his planet Veganman. Johnny offers to help him return home if he promises not to come back to destroy Earth. Vegan initially refuses, but eventually accepts after taking a job at a car dealership. Despite their efforts to stop him, Johnny, Dukey, and Vegan, with the help of hypnotized Gil, manage to reach the Test family's rocket and return to Veganman. However, upon their return, Vegan discovers Veganman lacks bread and toasters, leading to his frustration. In the end, Johnny and Dukey celebrate Vegan's departure, but their joy is short-lived as Vegan, along with his family, returns to Earth, still intent on his destructive mission. In the episode The Johnny Minster Dog Show, Johnny and Dukey visit a snooty dog park but get kicked out because Dukey is not a purebred dog. They meet other rejected dog owners outside, including a dog that smells like toilet water and a man with a dog wearing matching ascots. Susan and Mary tell them about the Porkminster Dog Show, but they are denied entry there too. Determined to get Dukey into the show, they return to the lab where Susan and Mary transform Dukey into various purebred dogs, but each transformation has a downside. Finally, they turn Dukey into a beagle puppy and enter him into the dog show, where he wins the hearts of the audience. However, he is kicked out when they realize he's not housebroken. Johnny uses Bigfoot to kick out the snooty dog park people and renames the show the Johnny Minster Dog Show. All the previously rejected dog owners are allowed to participate, and Dukey wins the show with a spectacular performance, receiving a trophy and a blue ribbon. In the episode Johnny's Big Dumb Sisters, Johnny and Dukey accidentally turn Susan and Mary dumb with a mind-building machine. Realizing they need uranium to reverse the effect, Johnny tries to get some from various sources but fails. Eventually, they take the girls to the Pork Belly Institute of Technology where the uranium is stored. They avoid Professor Slopsink, who wants the girls to take a scholarship test and manage to get the uranium. However, they accidentally start a core meltdown at the pit trying to fix it. Johnny distracts Professor Slopsink to buy time. As they try to stop the meltdown, Bling Bling Boy initially refuses to help but eventually comes to their aid, realizing his mistake in creating a robot university. Bling Bling helps them open the uranium room, and they use it to make the girls smart again and stop the meltdown. The girls are congratulated and given their scholarship back, while Bling Bling apologizes for his actions and is allowed back into pit. The episode ends with Bling Bling's humorous attempt to impress Susan, and the return of Monte, the evil mouse who steals pizza from Bling Bling, shouting, "Ivy got the cheese." In the episode, the destruction of Johnny X, Johnny and Dukey accidentally turn Lolo into a giant monkey. To save the town, Susan and Mary transform them into Johnny X and Super Dukey. They successfully return Lolo to normal and are hailed as heroes, receiving candy and a parade. Inspired, Johnny and Dukey decide to become full-time superheroes. The mayor gives them a wristwatch to alert them of trouble, but the townspeople misuse it, causing Johnny and Dukey to be awake for 3 days. Susan and Mary devise a plan to make the town think they are dead. They pretend to be villains from Evil Planet and destroy Johnny X and Super Dukey with laser blasts. The town begs for mercy, and Johnny and Dukey destroy their costumes, ending their superhero stint. Later, when some kittens are trapped in a burning building, Johnny and Dukey dress up as different superheroes to rescue them. The episode concludes as they fly back home, having saved the day once again. In this Valentine's Day episode, Johnny vs. Bling Bling IV, Johnny's mission is to prevent Bling Bling Boy from making Susan his Valentine. Bling Bling creates love chocolates that, when shot at someone, make them love the shooter. Determined to win Susan's affection, Bling Bling tries various schemes. First, he attempts to shoot Susan with the chocolates, but Johnny and Dukey, disguised as the twins, trick him. Bling Bling then uses a love tank to blast a canister into the lab, but Johnny deceives him by claiming the lab is occupied by Cava girls, who chase Bling Bling away. Bling Bling's scientists then suggest a plan where Bling Bling rescues Susan from an angry gorilla as a superhero named Diamond Man, hoping she will fall in love with him. However, Johnny, also disguised in a suit, saves Susan instead. Thinking Johnny is someone else, Susan briefly falls for him. A jealous Bling Bling fights Johnny in a long battle, which ends in a tie due to their indestructible suits. Despite the defeat, Bling Bling and Johnny convince Susan to join them for a soda, but Susan remains unimpressed, staying far away from Bling Bling at the ice cream parlor. The episode concludes with Johnny and Dukey enjoying their ice cream. In the episode Johnny Locked Down, Johnny and Dukey attempt to sneak into Susan and Mary's lab to retrieve a mercury flytrap for the school fair. However, they're thwarted by the twins, who have banned Johnny from the lab due to previous mishaps. Determined to get the plant, Johnny tries various unsuccessful methods, including teleportation and breaking in. As tensions rise, Johnny's mother, Leela, intervenes, suggesting that they work together to help Johnny with his project. However, Hugh insists that Johnny should do it himself. This leads to a race between Leela, Johnny, and Dukey against Hugh, Susan, and Mary to reach the lab first. Despite several failed attempts, Johnny comes up with a clever plan to lure the mercury flytrap out of the lab using the smell of BBQ. With the help of a fan, they entice the plant to follow the scent outside. They then transport it to the science fair, where it initially impresses Mr. Teacherman. However, when the mercury flytrap runs out of meat and becomes aggressive, chaos ensues at the fair. As the plant wreaks havoc on the town, Johnny's family reunites and apologizes to each other. They ponder how to stop the rampaging plant, but ultimately decide to leave it to the authorities. The episode concludes with Johnny and his family enjoying a meal in Paris, reflecting on their wild adventure. In the episode Johnny Goes Nuts, it's the 100th annual Nut Festival, a time when squirrels run to the park to dig up nuts they bury for the winter. Johnny and Dukey are excited to run with the squirrels, but Johnny's mom, allergic to nuts, won't let him due to past chaos at the festivals. Determined to participate, Johnny and Dukey try various schemes to escape, but Leela thwarts their plans. Susan and Mary devise a plan to help Johnny and Dukey get to the festival. They use construction drones to free them and create a flying lawn chair for them to fly to the festival. However, Leela, using a rocket broom she borrowed from Susan and Mary, pursues them to stop them from going to the festival. Despite Leela's efforts, Susan and Mary manage to free Johnny and Dukey again using a universal remote. They race to the festival, where Johnny and Dukey sign up to run with the squirrels. However, the squirrels cause chaos, injuring many, including Johnny, Dukey, Hank Enterman, and Speed McCool. In the end, Johnny decides to watch the festival from home with his family, including his dad, who has his own misadventures trying to get out of a nut tree. In the episode Johnny Daddy Day, Johnny realizes it's Father's Day, prompting him, Susan, Mary, and Leela to plan a gift for Hugh. They decide to use Robot Dad to cook a fancy dinner. However, when Robot Dad malfunctions and attacks Hugh, they switch to making him Meatloaf. Unfortunately, the Meatloaf comes to life and attacks Hugh too, leading to chaos in the house. After Hugh ends up wrapped in bandages, the family tries to cheer him up with various surprises, including a cat and Hugh's old friend Willie Keller. However, each attempt backfires, with Willie and Hugh ending up in a fight. In a final attempt to make things right, Susan and Mary use a spring serum on Hugh, causing him to bounce uncontrollably. Eventually, Hugh ends up in the hospital, all wrapped up in bandages. Despite the mishaps, Hugh appreciates the effort and love from his family. As the episode ends, Johnny accidentally ejects Hugh from the hospital bed, but the family remains optimistic, knowing that Hugh appreciates their efforts. In the episode Johnny vs. Bling Bling, The Ultimate Battle, Bling Bling laments his scientist's inability to capture Susan. Despite warnings about Johnny, Bling Bling's arrogance leads him to Pork Belly, where he and Johnny engage in a series of revenge attempts, from video games to giant pies. Their battles escalate until the Test sisters and Bling Bling's scientists intervene, tired of their antics. Forced to agree to a final showdown, Johnny and Bling Bling prepare for the ultimate battle, with the winner claiming the Johnny vs. Bling Bling crown. As they train, Bling Bling's lack of fitness becomes apparent, leading to comedic mishaps. The showdown involves robots, tanks, and a football field collision, all ending in ties and hospital visits. In the hospital, the rivalry continues with a race down Suicide Hill on hospital beds. Exhausted and fed up, Johnny and Bling Bling turn their weapons on their arguing allies, prompting a battle between the Test sisters and the scientists. The episode ends with Johnny and Bling Bling watch them battle each other while enjoying their popcorn. In Johnny Goes Camping, Johnny's week at school takes a destructive turn when he tests his sister's inventions, leading to chaos and ultimately the release of a monster from another dimension. The school guidance counselor, fed up with Johnny's behavior, forces him to go on a camping trip with his father to rectify his actions. To avoid expulsion, Johnny must bring back a pine cone as evidence of the trip. Johnny plans to forge the evidence, believing his dad hates camping. However, Hugh surprises him by being overly excited about the trip. Reluctantly, Johnny accompanies his enthusiastic father but secretly plots to turn Dukey into a monster to scare off Hugh during the trip. Despite initial resistance from his sisters and Dukey, Johnny convinces them to help with his plan through a heartfelt speech and a bit of guilt-tripping. Armed with a monsterization ray from his sisters, Johnny sets his plan in motion. However, things take an unexpected turn when Dukey is whisked away by a female Bigfoot. Desperate to save Dukey, Johnny enlists Hugh's help and they track him to a cave, only to discover Bigfoot's unexpected affection for Dukey. In a dramatic showdown, the group faces off against Bigfoot but is saved by a group of monsterized chipmunks, whom Johnny had previously fed all their food supplies. Realizing Bigfoot's loneliness, Johnny devises a new plan with his sisters to release the interdimensional monster into the woods as a mate for Bigfoot. The plan succeeds and both creatures find companionship, culminating in a mock wedding ceremony. In a later episode called Johnny Trick or Treat, Johnny and Dukey stroll down their street, unimpressed by the Halloween decorations, until they find a letter on their door. It promises a ton of candy if they spend a night in a haunted house by the graveyard, dressed in a provided costume. Despite the embarrassing tutu costume, Johnny accepts the challenge. His sisters mock his outfit before leaving for a costume party. Outside, Johnny and Dukey encounter Black and White, disguised as his sisters, who tease Johnny's attire. They're joined by Jillian, who's trick-or-treating due to a cold. She tags along to the haunted house. Inside, they face challenges orchestrated by Dark Vegan, who watches from a control room. Despite traps and monsters, they persevere thanks to Dukey's powers. Dark Vegan's plans backfire when he inadvertently endangers his own daughter, Jillian. Trapped in the creature's stomach, Johnny's resourcefulness saves them. Dark Vegan apologizes, revealing his motive was revenge for Johnny's previous actions. Johnny forgives him, but Dark Vegan admits there was never any candy. It was a trick. However, they make it to the costume party just in time. Johnny wins first prize for his zombie ballerina boy costume, earning an extreme candy maker machine. Excited, Johnny and Dukey anticipate the candy haul as the episode concludes. In the episode Smooth Talking Johnny, Hugh and Leela eagerly anticipate the clock striking 6 o'clock, hoping for a peaceful evening as chaos has been absent for almost 3 days. In the living room, Johnny and Dukey play video games until the Test girls show off their invention, a vocal intonator replicator. As 6 o'clock arrives, Hugh and Leela rejoice, planning to grant the kids a special outing. However, Johnny feels disheartened knowing that his vote doesn't matter since the girls outnumber him. Dukey suggests Johnny manipulate them using the invention, but Johnny doubts it'll work. In separate incidents, Susan overhears Johnny speaking ill of her using Mary's voice, while Mary hears Johnny speaking ill of her using Susan's voice. At the arcade, Johnny and Dukey enjoy themselves while Susan and Mary remain silent due to their anger. At home, the boys discover the girls have erected an electric force field to avoid each other, intensifying their feud. Mary creates hover shoes, causing Johnny to spin in circles and receive electric shocks when he crosses onto Susan's side. In various rooms, Johnny tries unsuccessfully to reconcile his sisters, who continue to prank and harm him. Eventually, Johnny hides in his closet, where he discovers the vocal intonator replicator and devises a plan to use it to mend his sister's relationship. In the lab, Johnny uses the device to impersonate both Mary and Susan, urging each sister to reconcile with the other. However, his manipulation is exposed, leading to a crane fight between the sisters, with Johnny caught in the middle. As they realize Johnny's role in their conflict, the girls become angry, and Johnny attempts to justify his actions, but is blasted through the roof. Hugh and Leela are excited for their fourth day without chaos, but then Johnny gets blasted out of the roof and Hugh remarks, "Oh, so close." The episode Johnny and Bling Bling Bond begins with Dukey and Johnny starting their tightly scheduled day, but their plans are interrupted by the constant ringing of the doorbell. Susan and Mary notice it's Bling Bling Boy and turn themselves invisible using their new Invisoflage spray. Johnny answers the door and finds Bling Bling Boy wearing casual clothes. Bling Bling Boy explains that he was grounded for breaking his mother's expensive belongings and is now without money for a week. He decides to spend the day with Johnny since he's the only regular kid he knows. Johnny agrees on the condition that Bling Bling Boy won't bother Susan for a month. In return, Susan and Mary give Johnny 20 Susan and Mary bucks. Throughout the day, Bling Bling Boy criticizes Johnny and Dukey's activities, preferring more expensive things. He leaves after failing to ride a bike because no one would do it for him. However, he returns the next day with a phaser and continues to visit every day during his grounding. On the 8th day, the first day of his ungrounding, Bling Bling Boy returns for another playdate. Johnny, tired of his attitude, intentionally ruins his father's meatloaf, resulting in Johnny getting grounded. He shares the news with Bling Bling Boy, who sympathizes and leaves. Later, Johnny is kidnapped by a giant robotic Bling Bling Boy. Susan and Mary, still invisible, rescue Johnny and give him the Invisoflage spray. Johnny uses it to turn a tree invisible, causing Bling Bling Boy to crash into it. In the end, Bling Bling Boy threatens to jetpack Susan away and reveals he lied about leaving Susan alone for a month. Johnny's 100th episode starts with Johnny dressing up as various fairy tale characters such as Little Bo Peep, Little Red Riding Hood, and a princess, due to a spray invented by his sisters that causes him to act out fairy tales. His sisters try various methods to bring him back to reality, but to no avail. They realize that Johnny needs to hear real stories from the people he cares about to wake up. Mr. Black and Mr. White tell the story of how they first met Johnny, where Johnny's kindness moved them. Bling Bling Boy breaks in and recounts how Johnny's sacrifice saved him from his own destructive plans. Even Dark Vegan and Mr. Mittens share stories of Johnny's impact on them. Despite these stories, Johnny remains unconscious. Dukey then tells the story of how Johnny saved him from the pound, choosing him over a puppy and bringing him home. Susan realizes that Johnny is stuck in the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale and that he needs a kiss to wake up. Sissy Blakely, who had entered the lab, reluctantly agrees to kiss Johnny, and he wakes up grossed out but grateful to be back. Johnny's next episode starts from where the previous left off. After Johnny awakens from his fairy tale adventure, Mr. Mittens, despite initially disliking the fairy tale spray, wonders if it could be used for world domination, scaring Sissy Blakely. Johnny and Dukey discuss using the spray on Sissy, but Susan and Mary explain its unpredictable effects and how to disable it. Johnny leaves to disinfect himself from Sissy's kiss, and Bling Bling Boy asks if Susan would love him with the spray. The agent sees the spray, but Bling Bling threatens to use it to make Susan kiss him. An explosion occurs, and Hugh finds Mr. Mittens and Albert dressed as fairy tale characters, believing they must save Susan from King Bling, Bling Bling Boy. Hugh confronts King Bling in the lab, but King Bling sends him out the window. Johnny and Dukey try to help Hugh, but are stopped by Mittens and Boots and Albert. They try to rescue Susan using a hair ladder, but fail. Mittens and Albert almost defeat Johnny and Dukey in a sword fight, but the Agent Knights intervene. Johnny finds a weapon in Mary's magical glass slipper, and with Dukey, rides the Agent Knights' horses to the lab. Johnny defeats King Bling and saves Susan using the slipper's grappling hook. As Susanzel escapes, everyone snaps out of the fairy tale trance. The episode ends with everyone enjoying a feast, but Hugh is still seeing things from the fairy tale. A Picture's Worth 1,000 Johnny starts in the living room, where Johnny and Dukey play video games as Hugh enters sadly with an envelope containing the family photo. Excitedly, Johnny calls the family to the kitchen to see the new picture, suggesting it as a replacement for the creepy old dude portrait. Lila scolds him for disrespecting their great-great-grandfather's photo but agrees to replace it. Johnny opens the envelope, revealing the photo to mixed reactions from the family. In a flashback 1 week earlier, the Test family wears matching white sweaters at the Pork Belly Mall for their annual photo. Hugh, determined that nothing will go wrong this time, accidentally steps in a cleaning bucket. Despite their early arrival, the family learns their appointment is at 1:30, prompting Johnny and Dukey to head to the arcade. Hugh insists nobody leaves until the photo is taken. Susan and Mary visit Gil at the carousel, while Leela searches for her pretzel punch card. Johnny, trying to find a lost baby, encounters various mishaps, including stopping a train. As the photo time approaches, chaos ensues with Hugh getting knocked into a tanning booth, Leela ending up in a garbage truck, and Dukey fleeing from an old lady. Despite the chaos, the family appreciates their adventurous photo, but decides to try again next year. In the last flight of Johnny X, Johnny and Dukey are hit by a laser beam which wakes them up. Thinking he's late for school, Johnny rushes to his wardrobe only to find that Susan and Mary have given him his X powers to save the city from a smashing robot. Despite the chaos, it is the 100th time a monster has attacked Pork Belly, which causes a misplaced celebration. Johnny X and Super Dukey face the robot, and Johnny defeats it using his fire fart. However, the duo is captured by the military, where Mr. Black and White explain that the general has banned all the self-proclaimed superheroes. When asked why, they show them a video where Bling Bling, Dark Vegan, and Brain Freezer created monsters to attack Pork Belly and destroy them just to show themselves as heroes. This is why they have to ban superheroes. The next day, Johnny wakes up late for his school and misses his bus. He decides to use Dukey to fly, who agrees after some blackmailing. However, as soon as they fly, they are pursued by rockets and put in jail. The general puts Johnny and Dukey with Bling Bling, Dark Vegan, and Brain Freezer in jail, who explain they had set wave of monsters to defeat them later. Just then, Susan and Mary arrive and give them a car, which is not illegal as for now. They then use the car's awesome powers to defeat two monsters created by the fake heroes. With military on their tail, Johnny decides to use his own powers to defeat the monster who was about to eat the general. In the end, the general decides to lift the ban on superheroes, and Johnny excuses himself cause he's late for school. And now it's time for the final episode of Johnny Test, Johnny's last chapter. When Johnny fails to present Pork Belly's history in class, Mr. Teacherman gives him 1 week to study the history book or he will be sent to a reading ranch. Johnny takes the book home but wastes the entire day doing playful activities. He then asks Susan and Mary for help, who introduce him to an invention which scans the book and makes a movie out of it so it is easier to remember. When they say it is not finished and has many bugs, Johnny ignores their warning and rushes to use it, only for him and Dukey to get sucked inside the machine. They decide to explore the old Pork Belly, where they meet Gil's ancestor posing as Robin Hood. Gil explains his spray camouflage that lets him hide in the forest, which Johnny not only writes down on a sheet of paper but also steals after Gil runs away. As they proceed to the next chapters, Susan and Mary try to help them escape the history book before they get in trouble. In Chapter 6, they dress up as cowboys and meet Eugene, the cowardly boy who is scared of cows. Johnny uses a leash to guide all the cows away and suggests Eugene to raise pigs instead. Eugene decides to change his name from the cowardly boy to Pork Belly, making them realize that is where the name of their city comes from. They pass through a clown rebellion, making Susan and Mary realize that the history of their city is quite fun. However, the end of the book is coming, and they must pull them out or else they'll be stuck inside forever. Using a footnote, they warn Johnny and Dukey to not go to the end of the book, and when Johnny tries to go to the previous chapters, the door doesn't open. The book forces them forward, eventually passing them through the last chapter into a dark pit. However, Johnny uses the leash from earlier to dandle in the air and then climbs up to rewrite the history using the spray he stole earlier. They create a brand new chapter which works according to their imagination, which gives Susan and Mary enough time to create an escape plan involving a rocket. The next day, Johnny reads the entire history of Pork Belly in class, including the one he created himself. When Mr. Teacherman says he made the last part up, Susan, Mary, and Dukey prove him right by arriving in the rocket outside his school. Johnny rushes inside, and they all fly into space, thus marking a conclusion to the Johnny Test series. If you enjoyed the video, leave us a like and subscribe to our channel. Press the bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Comment what series you want us to cover next. That'll be it from us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.